More with Joe Kissell on Take Control of Mac Basics. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by our Patreon subscribers. Get access to the MacVoices Slack, the MacVoices Discord, MacVoices After Dark, and have your name listed at the end of each episode of MacVoices. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is part 2 of our recent conversation with Joe Kissell about his new book, Take Control of Mac Basics. As I said in the outro to the last session, if you think that you know everything, no matter how many years you've been using a Mac, Joe can teach you a little bit something new. Let's let Joe do the talking. You asked me to bring you back to switchers.
Yeah. Well, of course, I know that lots of different people are going to be reading this book. Some of them are going to be people who have been using a Mac for a while, but just aren't really familiar with what they're doing. Some of them will be people who maybe haven't used a computer before ever. I tell a story in the introduction to this book about how back in the early 90s, I was doing training, and I would go to companies. They would hire me to come in and train their employees on various things. So this one company hired me to come in and teach their employees how to use this certain word processor. And I was very careful. I said, okay, tell me exactly how much computer experience, how much Mac experience these users are going to have, so that I can, calibrate my curriculum accordingly. And my contact said, "Oh, everybody is a completely experienced Mac user. They just don't know this one particular app." Okay, so I go in, and the first day of training, I've got my big screen behind me, and I have this whole course outline. I'm going to walk them through all these features, and I start seeing confused looks on everybody's faces, and people would raise their hand and ask me questions about things that made no sense to me, like, why is there a clock in the menu bar? I've got a watch on my wrist. Why do we need a clock there? And I'm like, you ma'am in the front row, can you just tell me briefly about your previous computer experience? And she said she had literally never touched a computer at all before that day. She wasn't just new to this app or new to a Mac, she was new to computers. So I have to assume that some of the people in our audience could be like that, even in 2025, new computer users. Okay. And there will also be people who have been accustomed to using Windows, and for whatever reason, they decided they'd like to use a Mac instead. And they are probably going to be confused by some things. So I do make some mentions of Windows things throughout the book, but I have an entire appendix at the end that is just for Windows switchers. And part of what this appendix does is to say, you might be familiar with this term in Windows or this interface element. Where do you find the nearest thing on your Mac? So on a Windows PC, there's this strip at the bottom that's has kind of different areas. Like you have this kind of menu in the middle, and there's this icon for the start menu, but there's also a search field, and then over the right, that's called the system tray, and you have icons to do little things in certain apps. And so we don't have anything exactly like that on a Mac, but it shares some elements in common with the dock and with your status menu bar icons and with Spotlight. So I take you through the thing that you are used to on Windows. It's File Explorer. Oh, well, that would be similar to the Finder on a Mac. But where do I find this? Oh, that's very similar to this thing on a Mac. Now, I don't know if I should credit Microsoft or Apple or both. Over the years, the interfaces of Windows and macOS have converged a bit. So a Windows user does not have to, they're not going to be like surprised or confused by the fact that they have a desktop folder, a documents folder, a downloads folder, a home folder. These are all elements that exist in Windows 2. They might be confused about the fact that there's only one menu bar, because in Windows, each window has its own built-in menu bar as opposed to a single menu bar at the top. And that single menu bar at the top switches depending on which app is active. So this could be a very unfamiliar concept to a Windows user, so I explain all that. So I talk about not only what are the differences and how to become more comfortable in this environment, but I also talk about if you had a Windows PC and you now have a Mac, how do you move your stuff over and get it into the equivalent places and the equivalent formats? So I'm trying to be as helpful as I reasonably can be to everyone, no matter what situation they are starting from when they start using a Mac.
I applaud you. I think that's a fantastic approach, especially given that so many new Mac users who might benefit from Mac Basics may or almost probably would have come over from the PC side. So, yeah, that's a nice addition to it. That's a nice addition to it. What haven't I asked? I mean, because I find myself struggling a little bit, just for the very reasons we started out with, that I almost don't know how basic to ask a question about basics.
Yeah, so I'm looking over my table of contents now to see if there. Oh, I do include things like you'll be talking to somebody or reading a website or looking for technical support online or whatever, and they'll say, "Oh, well, this feature is only available in Sonoma or later," and you'll be like, "Okay, I don't know if I'm in Sonoma or later. Like, there's nothing about the name that automatically implies the version number. So, okay, yeah, you got to learn that. So I have a list of, macOS 10.12, that was in 2016, and that was called Sierra. And macOS 11 in 2020, that was called Big Sur. So some of this is going to require nobody has to memorize this stuff, of course. What you do need to know is, what are you using right now? What's it called? And maybe what was the one just previous to that? So those are the kinds of things you can learn. I talk about the Finder at some length, including, of course, the dock and how Windows work and the desktop and things of that sort. The structure of macOS. So if you just start clicking around icons and navigating up and down and in and out, you're going to find, there's an applications folder. It's got applications in it. If I go to the library folder, wait a minute, there's another applications folder. What's that all about? And so there we have certain folders that appear a bunch of places. There are a bunch of different library folders and a bunch of different examples of certain other kinds of folders. What is your home folder? What's it for? Do you have more than one user on your Mac? What's that all about? Where are certain things located, and how do I find stuff on my Mac? I have a whole chapter introducing you to your Apple account and iCloud. Of course, we have an entire book about your Apple account, and we have a whole different book about iCloud. But you have to know at least this much about those two interrelated concepts to use a Mac, because those elements that connect you to the broader Apple experience and connect your devices to each other are just completely pervasive throughout everything you do on your Mac. So I introduce you to what those things are, what they mean. I talk about system-wide features, cut, copy, and paste. Not entirely obvious to everyone, but I talk about things like that. Siri, keyboard shortcuts, notifications, the kind of things that everybody is just there. Goes, I saw a thing pop up on my screen. What is that? Why did it go away? How do I see it again? What is that for? System settings. there's a million of them. I don't talk about all of them, but I talk about generally how you navigate the system settings app and where you find some important things. Of course, I have to mention backing up your Mac, some online privacy things, some security things, just the very basics. But I want to make sure that you can use your Mac safely, and that you're not going to suddenly lose data and not know what to do about it.
I hadn't even thought about iCloud. I hadn't even gotten there. And you mentioned the broader Apple experience. And it's something we all talk about so much, is that, the Apple ecosystem. And if you don't have any idea about it, then you're not going to appreciate just what you can do in it and why it benefits you so much. So that would be a key element. And to your point, it deserves a book of its own. But to let somebody know what it is,
boy,
somebody should.
I wonder if I know anybody who might be interested in doing that.
Again, trying to draw those lines and be as inclusive as you can and as exhaustive as you can, but not put somebody completely to sleep or just overwhelm them and think, oh my God, I'll never know all this stuff.
That's the last thing I want. I want for everybody who uses a Mac to kind of feel like, okay, I get it. I'm not looking to turn everybody into a computer geek or an expert. I just want you to feel comfortable and competent. I don't want you to feel like, oh, I'm afraid of the thing on the screen. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what I call this thing. I don't know why it's doing what it's doing. I just want you to feel a sense of calmness and relaxation. I know what I'm doing here. It's all good. So if I can accomplish that, I feel like I've done an important job.
I think it's a very important book that I'm afraid I don't want anybody to overlook it and think, well, I already know, because you may know enough about what you do, but there's so much more that maybe you could do. And, that's fine. I enjoy going to basics courses or reading basics books, because inevitably I find out something that I should have known, I could have known, I didn't know, and now I can add it to my repertoire. So, yeah.
Yeah, even me, as I'm writing this book, I'm like, oh, so that's what that thing is called. I've used that thing a million times. I didn't really know that it had a name, or I made up a name for it because, but there's a name for it. Oh, how about that? Well, now I know a new thing. And it's just like, so I was doing this video call with this company that I'm doing some consulting for, and it involved me there. I was sharing my screen, and I was doing some things in Terminal so that they could see. And there was, the Terminal screen was kind of cluttered. By the way, this has nothing to do with basics. I'm just going to say, so the screen was cluttered, and they're like, oh, why don't you clear your screen so we just have a blank page and we can serve from that. So of course I typed in the word clear, press return, and the screen cleared. And they're like, well, Joe, you can just press Command K to clear the screen. And I literally wrote a book on Terminal, and I mentioned that in the book. Okay. So this is not news to me, but through for whatever reason, I had forgotten, right? That had slipped from my memory, and I'm like, oh yeah, Command K. That's way easier. It's faster. It's less typing. Why did I forget that? I don't know. Things happen. So even the best of us can overlook or forget or get into bad habits. So there were a bunch of things that I found when writing this book that were kind of in that category. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, I could do it that way too. Well, duh. So I do think that everyone can benefit from it.
Again, well, first of all, I can hopefully make you feel better, because how many times do you really need to clear your screen, except for a case like what you were doing?
If it's me and you spend a lot of time in Terminal, surprisingly often.
Oh, okay. All right. I just know how many times I
So,
walk into a basics course and I walk out and say, how did I not know about that feature or that option? And it's something that I absolutely will use, on a weekly or maybe daily basis. And it just somehow got by me. So
all right, I want to mention another quick story.
please.
So back in I don't know, this must have been like 1992, 3, somewhere in that range. I was doing. I had signed. I signed up to be a sort of certified trainer for Nicest Writer. Now, there's a whole big thing about Nicest Writer and long story. But anyway, part of this, in order to get this certification, is I had to fly. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time. I had to fly out to California and do a week of training with them. And ostensibly, this training was to teach me how to teach other people about this app. So I'm sitting there in this conference room with the other trainees, and the folks from Nicest Software are, they've got their screen and they're showing us all this stuff, and they're like, we are going to teach you about Nicest Writer, but there are also some things that we just feel like you ought to know that are just kind of general Mac basics things that a lot of people don't realize. And one of the things I remember being shown the first day in that training course was, we have a word processor document open. There's some text in it. Of course, you can double click a word to select it. Okay, that's easy. I think most people know how to do that. What I didn't know at that time was, if you double click, but then you hold the mouse down after that second click and you move to the right or to the left, you now extend your selection one word at a time. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. It's not just double click, but double click and drag does another thing that is actually time saving and useful. I use that all the time. And so they showed us a whole bunch of things like that weren't specific to their app at all. They're just general Mac things, but things that, as useful as they are, a lot of people had never noticed. And Apple, of course, never bothered to go out of their way to explain or teach or call attention to. So, sorry, like, what is that sound I'm hearing? It's somebody printing something on the printer my office. So, but I wanted to include a few little things like that are just like, I'll bet you never knew. And why would you know? How would you just intuit this? You couldn't possibly just know this, but boy, oh boy, is it useful.
Yeah. So many examples like that. So many examples like that. So obviously you go to takecontrolbooks.com to get this book. Joe, what is the pricing situation on this one?
So it's a $14.99 book. We are so first of all, if you had Tanya's old Take Control of Mac Basics book, you will have received email from me about a special low price on the new book, and we are discussing various other kinds of potential offers, which we haven't entirely sorted out yet. But the cover price is $14.99. And as always, if you decide to buy this along with 2 or more other full price books, you get an automatic 30% off everything in your order. We do have sales from time to time, but this is a meaty book, and boy, it took me a long time to write. So I think it's going to be extremely valuable, and if I do say so myself, well worth the $15.
Listen, I think I can think of a couple people I'd like to buy this for already, because I think that they will benefit from it, and frankly, then they won't call me and ask me all these questions. So it would be worth.
Well, there might have been a little bit of a self-serving aspect to writing this book. I do get the phone calls and the emails, and I every time I'm like, I wish I just had a book that I could point people to. Now I do.
Yeah, now you do. Now you do. Joe, it's great to see you as always. Thanks so much. Do we have anything else for folks to look forward to in the medium future, intermediate future? Or shouldn't I ask?
We absolutely do. Other Take Control authors who you know and love, like Glenn Fleischman and Jeff Carlson and Shelley McFarland, are working on new or updated books that you're really going to like. And those, we have at least 2 such releases later on in February. So, and hopefully more, but we'll see what the timing turns out to be. I personally have a bunch of, I've been doing a lot of smaller updates, just like, for compatibility with the latest operating systems. And I have 4 or 5 similar updates to do, not gigantic things, but just like, things changed in Sequoia or whatever, and I need to document those. So those will be trickling out. And then I have 4 at this moment, additional brand new from scratch kinds of books that I am working on to one extent or another that will be coming out over the coming months. Cannot give you exact dates. Writing books takes a while, even for me. So we will see how long they take. And some of the books can't come out until something else happens in the software industry someplace. So we'll just see, But I would like to think that by, I don't know, summer or something, I've got another 3 or 4 new books in the catalog, and also working on my monster to-do list, which includes new features on our website and bug fixes, and we're working on like redesigning the interiors of our books and trying to modernize a lot of things. So it's not going to be all of a sudden you wake up one day and everything's brand new and different. It's going to be a gradual, add a new feature here, make an improvement there kind of thing. But I am trying very, very hard to work through this long list as expeditiously as I can.
Well, I will look forward to talking to all the other Take Control authors, and I will definitely look forward to talking to you about your books, as well as, we'll throw in maybe a couple little updates on the website or excerpts from your things to do list as they fall off of that list. How's that?
Okay.
That was easy. Joe, thanks again. Yeah, let's do that.
Sure.
Let's do that. Thanks again. It's great to see you.
You're quite welcome.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. TakeControlBooks.com is where you go to get Mac Basics, as well as all of the other great Take Control books. I'm a fan of them. I love talking to the Take Control authors because they condense things down and make them understandable and make them useful. Go get them. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.